Welcome back to the Greenhouse Podcast. I have a repeat offender on today, a returning guest, and I'm looking forward to this conversation today. Steve Horner is back. Welcome back, Steve.
Thank you.
So glad you're here. Again, for people that are connected with our church, you guys know probably Steve and Sue. They serve in lots of different roles around our church as trustees. And just Steve is involved in so many different things, leading groups at times. This semester they're teaching a Live Well class on managing household finances. Sue is just a rock star in kids. And so we're just grateful for them and who they've been in the life of our church, who they've been to Shannon and I personally. And so a few episodes back, we talked really just about some high-level church things and then Live Well. And so your class is like in week 4, I think, or 5?
We just finished week 4.
So give us an update.
So great participation among the members. They seem to be learning things. They tell us they are. We actually ended last week asking for feedback, and everybody gave us, good feedback about the things they're learning. And so we've covered a lot. And this week we're going into how to invest money, how to pick a financial planner. So I think it's going to be a really good class for everyone.
It's fantastic. You mentioned that it seems like this particular class, there's always a point, whether you're leading a group. I see this sometimes on Thursday mornings. And there was a time when we met with the men, and it was just like crickets. It was almost like a funeral. And now it's like women's meeting. There's just so much chatter going on. Right. You mentioned that there was this more interaction and stuff. You kind of hit this moment of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the things we begin with in the very first week is we say, sort of the group rules are discussions expected and required. Nobody was discussing or expecting except for Sue and I. Hardly. I mean, there were some comments, some questions, but last week it's like the floodgates opened up. Questions started coming. They were all great questions, and it gave us an opportunity to do some things. And then Michael Sparuta stumped me with a question. It was an answer. I didn't have an answer for it, but I went home, researched it. I've got the answer for next week.
All right.
So we're set.
Can we know what that question is? Just for fun?
The question was that, can anybody open up a Roth IRA, or is there an income limit? So if you make too much money, can you still have a Roth IRA? And without getting into all the details, there are certain tax advantages to a Roth IRA over a regular IRA. But I had to go home and research that, found out that yes, indeed, there is an income limit. If you make over a certain amount of money, you cannot put money into a Roth IRA.
Wow.
But then there's more. There is a backdoor way to still put money into a Roth IRA.
Of course there is.
So I'm going to share that.
See, these are
week.
things that you can get in this class. I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
the average bear doesn't know it.
Yep.
But there's more.
That's right.
It's so good. Well, part of what I wanted to talk about today is usually every human has a slant or a strength. Pastoring people for 25 years, there's people that approach things primarily intellectually with their mind. Jesus said, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And so I have found that a lot of times people are, they're either like really linear and really like X's and O's, systems, spreadsheet kind of, or they're super Philly, like they're a heart person. They wear their emotions on their sleeve. And so God wires us differently. Mm-hmm. And so we bring that into our life with God and how we approach Him. And so one of the things I wanted to help people see is, we told the story last time, our first kind of meeting, you had a spreadsheet out of like, this is what we're looking for in a church, all the questions. And so there can be this perception that, man, Steve is, which is true.
It's true.
But there's this like well of faith. I think a supernatural, like, connection with God and belief that anything's possible.
Yep.
And I think people wouldn't perceive that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I would agree. I'm a very linear thinker. Check the box. Let's go through the right order, get it all done. But there is definitely an emotional side to me. There's a spiritual side to me. And I tend to keep that under wraps. People don't see it so much unless you're someone who's very close to me. And I mean very.
Talk a little bit about, like, how you've cultivated this gift of faith. Gift of faith maybe not be the right phrase, but like, I think like I said, when it comes to like just the impossible, like you're not scared of it. I think, you've seen God move, you know what I mean? Like, you wouldn't like put that on, maybe not everything on like this billboard so everybody knows, but like there's like this depth of like, listen, I'm not going to back down. I've seen God, whatever. We can believe for the impossible.
Yeah. Some of it is probably intentionally cultivated. Some of it is almost just, stepping into it accidentally, if you will. But for Sue and I, early in our Christian walk, we saw God move in people's lives. And I think we both were saying, I want that too. And I think, to strengthen your faith, there's, of course you have to read the Word, but it's more than reading the Word. I think it's also studying the Word. And, and today it's so easy to study the Word. If you read something and you don't know what it means, just go to Google. What does it mean that God walked on the water?
Right.
And you're going to get a slew of commentaries from theologians, pastors, people who are deeper thinkers, know the Word better than you, and you can learn that.
Right.
Go buy a commentary where somebody, goes through the Bible line by line and makes comments and gives you better insight and knowledge. Get a study Bible. There's just so many tools available to us today to learn that. So I think studying and praying, those are two things. But like your sermon series for the past several weeks, you have to seek. And you have to be intentional to ask God to help build that faith up. But then I think the other thing you need to ask is, well, God, when you've done something in my life, make it obvious to me. If, simple things like maybe you got favor at work, at your employment, you got a raise or you got a promotion or something happened that normally doesn't happen to people in your workplace, ask God, was that you? Because maybe, not all those things are God, but maybe God did do that.
Right.
And that was something I would do frequently in my career because work was important to me. My career was important. And so, God would speak to me and say, I did that. That's why that happened to you. Or, I protected you here. But, so many things happened. And probably one of the earliest things was Sue was pregnant with our first child. And it took us several years before Sue was able to get pregnant. And in fact, we had essentially just given up and turned it over to God. And at the 6-month point of her pregnancy, she started bleeding, had to go on bed rest. And so we prayed and, because the doctor was saying, you may lose this baby, but, everything went smoothly. Sue, was able to overcome it. Our first child was born. with no complications, no issues. And, we looked to the leader of our church, our pastor. He was gone. He wasn't there to come pray with us. He was out of town.
Right.
Now, we could have gotten offended and been upset and said, this whole God thing isn't real. But we didn't do that.
Yeah.
We turned into ourselves and to God, and it worked.
So awesome. So you've seen the miraculous, you've seen the supernatural early on, with this situation with pregnancy. It's really kind of cool because, there's people in our church that have experienced similar things and some that are still believing for it.
Yep.
And the nature of faith and those type of things is they become fuel for someone else. It becomes
and it becomes fuel for yourself.
100%. It becomes a stone. It's like when they passed through the Jordan, the Lord said, "Hey, get these stones so that you remember the things that I've done."
Yep.
So if I was going to ask you, you mentioned that story. What are some additional leading up stones where you saw God's handiwork, whether it's in your own personal life or even when you've prayed for other people or witnessed things, because it's like there's something about when God does something that's, so recognizable that it's Him. It's like it just builds people's faith because the enemy accuses people so much.
Yeah.
It's never going to change. This can't happen. This can't happen. This can't. You just like your hope. You start believing that nothing can happen.
I had one instance. I had recently taken a new job. I'd only been in the job for about 6 months, so I was at the bottom of the totem pole within this company, and we only had about 30 employees. But 80% of our funding for the company, 80% of our revenue, was from a federal government contract. And one day I was in the office, and my boss, whose office was right next to mine, I heard him take a phone call. And then I heard it was a very short call, and then it was like silence. And then he came over to my office and told me, "Oh, we just lost the government contract." I said, "Oh, well, how long is that?" He said, "No, it's gone today." And I knew that meant people would get laid off. So I called Sue and told her. I called my pastor, called a few other close friends, asked everybody to pray. Because I knew I was going to lose my job. I mean, I was, again, the bottom of the totem pole.
Right.
And after, about a week to 2 weeks with the leadership of the company figuring out what was going to go on, I get called into the office. I'm thinking, okay, here, I'm getting my papers, my walking papers. And instead, I was told that I was being kept on. And that not only was I going to be kept on, but I was getting a promotion. And I was getting a company car because I was going to have to do some traveling. And so that was fantastic. And it was because of prayer, of friends and family and our pastor. And so God worked great in that way.
Miraculous moment.
Yeah.
Family and work. So over the last 24 months, probably, maybe, has it been 36 months?
It's been about 24 months.
The last 24 months, you have walked through 2 health challenges.
Yeah.
And, I tell people just because we love God and God loves us doesn't mean that we're 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Sometimes instead of walking around, oftentimes we dodge things, but sometimes we walk through them.
Yep.
And so in the last 24 months, you have seen God's handiwork and His kindness and His miraculous power.
Yep.
One was more, God used your body. He used medicine. He used his healing touch. And then one was supernatural.
Yes.
So maybe just talk through a little bit of those.
The first one was, it was actually more than 24 months ago. It was about almost 48 months now. In December, I'd gone in, had my routine physical with my doctor, and a couple weeks later, I get a phone call, and he's asking me to come into the office the next day. Yeah, hung up the phone. Figured a doctor never calls you and asks to come the next day because he's got good news.
Right.
So I knew there was some kind of bad news. So I go to his office, and I'm told that I have cancer. And had to go through a few additional tests and then radiation treatment. But when he told me I had cancer, I have to say, I mean, I don't know what most people's reaction is.
Sure.
I'm going to guess most people are like, oh my gosh, why is this? God, why do I have cancer? It didn't even faze me. It was kind of like, yeah, okay, fine, I got cancer. God will take care of it. I never even had a thought that I would die or anything from it. And I told very few people.
Right.
If you recall, I told you and the other two trustees, asked them to pray for me after a Thursday morning men's meeting. And that was essentially it. Very few other people did I tell, including family members.
Right.
And went through a 5 weeks course of radiation. Halfway through the radiation, the machine broke down. After a couple weeks, it still wasn't working. So they told me, and this was a special type of radiation called proton therapy. So they said, well, you're going to have to just go through regular radiation, which has more side effects, isn't necessarily successful. So I got prepared, had to go to a different facility, had to be worked up all over again, got ready. The day I was supposed to go to them for my first treatment, the proton machine was fixed. They called me up and said, can you be here in 10 minutes? And I only lived 10 minutes away. So I said, yeah, and was there. And they were able to finish up my treatment that way. So,
wow,
it's
like another small miracle.
Right. Absolutely. And so now I'm, happy to say I'm cancer-free and don't have to worry about that or even think about that at all any longer.
So tell me, Steve, I know you mentioned the word, studying, all those type of things, but I think, I jokingly say when we're bumped in life, we spill what we're full of. Now, sometimes that can be on people, but I think it's our response to what happened. Right. So when you say, man, the doctor said you got cancer, and I thought, well, God will take care of this. Just coach people up a minute on how to get there, because life's going to happen that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, life is going to happen that way. And I don't know how to tell people necessarily to coach up other than, again, study, prayer, and going on. But I just felt like other little things that had happened in our life that confirmed God's faithfulness just kept taking us up a step, until we're at a point where, we don't even have to think about it. It's just ingrained in us.
This is going to be no different.
Right. But I would say to people, if you really want to, and you talk about this a lot on Sundays, walking with the Spirit, being led by the Spirit, it tells us to walk with the Spirit in Galatians, be led by the Spirit in Romans. To do that, to cultivate that, again, study the Word, prayer. And let's make prayer real simple, because I think we tend to have this.
It's great. Please do.
We tend to think of prayer as being complex. It's just a conversation. Yeah. Hey, good morning, God. How are you? I'm doing good, but I've got this challenge. Could you help me with this today? I mean, just like you would talk to your spouse or your children. Then it's reducing distractions. Don't let things get in the way of that study and prayer. Then fourth is obeying the nudges. Sometimes I think the Holy Spirit talks to us. He whispers softly to us. And then we step back and say, yeah, that couldn't have been God.
Right.
Yeah, it's indigestion. It's not God. But act on that.
Yeah.
Test him.
Yeah.
And then last is repentance. Just because we said the sinner's prayer once, it's not a once and done.
Right.
Say it often.
Right. Right. So God leads you on this journey. You watch him, even just how you start. God's got this, the faith to, I think it's in the book of 1 John. This is the victory that's overcome the world, even our faith.
Yeah.
What is the world? The cosmos could be anything, could be cancer, could be whatever. But the faith response, it's like instead of that being our last resort, it was your first response. God's got this. It's like that simple confession is faith. Like you were saying, even about prayer, it's not necessarily, oh God, thank you. It's, hey, God's got this. That was.
Yep.
Faith that's firm,